Introducing Lindsey Duncan, a renowned expert in natural health and nutrition with over 38 years of experience. Trained by the legendary Dr. Bernard Jensen, Lindsey holds degrees in nutrition and naturopathic medicine and is celebrated for his groundbreaking supplement formulations. His passion for holistic health has reached millions through media appearances and packed auditoriums worldwide.
We are what we choose to eat, and we are what we digest, absorb, and assimilate. And if we're not careful, we become what we do not eliminate.
Lindsey's journey is marked by resilience, healing, and a renewed commitment to helping others live healthy, fulfilling lives. Please join me in welcoming Lindsey Duncan.
When I was asked to speak and present at the World Autism Summit by Karen Simmons, the first thing that I thought of was, how can I have the biggest impact in the shortest amount of time by addressing neurodiverse and autism at its deepest and most relevant core level? I thought to myself, I'm not really interested so much in the symptoms, because at the end of the day, our symptoms basically are indicators that something is off in our body, and they're screaming and begging us to find out what's going on in our body on a much deeper and more core level. Remember, a headache is not a deficiency of Tylenol or aspirin, and depression is not a deficiency of Prozac or another chemical drug. We have to quit chasing the symptoms, and we have to learn to go to the core. That's what we're doing today. And this is what I'm going to try to do today. I'm going to go to what I believe to be the deepest, most relevant core of autism and neurodiversity. And as I started constructing what I wanted to share and drawing from my 38 years of experience in the natural products, nutrition, alternative medicine, and wellness industry, I picked up the phone and I called my clinical research expert, Catherine Tipton. And I asked Catherine to pull as much clinical data as she could find pertaining to two main issues. I said, Catherine, I want you to find as much clinical evidence as you can find on gut issues and our critical gut microbiome being major and contributing factors to autism and ASD. Secondly, I said to Catherine, after you find that, I want you to find all the clinical evidence that you can find on heavy metals being a major factor in contributing to autism and ASD. I said, I don't need you to send me binders full of this information. I already know that it exists. I said, I want you to highlight it so that people can look at it and be impacted by it and begin to investigate into its disturbingly deep depths. I want people to see how much clinical documentation actually exists on these two critical core issues. Today, we're going to take a deep dive into these two issues, and I'm going to try to not put you to sleep with a bunch of clinical data that you could look up later on your own, but I'm going to talk from my own personal experience and from my heart as a nutritionist and a doctor of naturopathy, and as someone who's been helping people on their road to wellness for almost 4 decades. Let's take a look at what Catherine uncovered.
Hello, my name is Catherine Tipton, and Lindsey Duncan came to me and asked me to look into two things. The first is the clinical evidence of gut issues being a major factor in autism. After conducting some thorough research on this topic, we believe that a simple internet search is the best way to illustrate this. From nature.com, gastrointestinal disturbances such as diarrhea, constipation, and abdominal pain are often present in individuals with ASD. In addition, gastrointestinal problems are correlated to a higher degree of ASD severity. Some other common things that people are searching: is there a link between autism and gastrointestinal issues? Is autism caused by leaky gut? Is there a link between IBS and autism? Has research shown that people with autism tend to have a higher likelihood of having gastrointestinal problems? This clearly seems to be a problem that people are seeking answers for. From the National Institute of Health, the role of the gut microbiome in autism spectrum disorder. Several factors leading to ASD were identified. Another one from the National Institute of Health. GI disorders are approximately fourfold more prevalent in children with ASD than in the neurotypical population. And on forums like Reddit and Quora, what's the deal with autism and digestive issues? New evidence hints at the role of gut microbiota in autistic spectrum disorder. What is the link between gut inflammation and autism? From the Autism Research Institute, gastrointestinal issues like constipation, diarrhea, and abdominal pain are incredibly common in autism. From the University of Missouri, children with autism spectrum disorder tend to experience gastrointestinal issues such as constipation and stomach pain. From ScienceDirect.com, it's been reported that 83 to 91% of ASD individuals have co-occurrence of gastrointestinal disorders. From BMC Psychiatry, a high prevalence of a variety of gastrointestinal symptoms is frequently reported in patients with autism spectrum disorders. Again, from the Autism Research Institute, gastrointestinal conditions like constipation, abdominal pain, and GERD often co-occur with autism and can significantly impact daily living. From the Mayo Clinic, yes, children with autism spectrum disorder tend to have more medical issues, including gastrointestinal symptoms. I think you get the point. Now let's look at the second research topic, clinical evidence of heavy metals being a major factor in autism. From Biomed Central, metals exposures are potential modifiable risk factors in ASD. Among children diagnosed with ASD relative to controls, higher childhood blood levels of arsenic, mercury, lead, and cadmium have been observed. Some other things people are searching in regards to this topic. Is there a link between heavy metals and autism? What is the biggest risk factor for autism? What is causing the huge increase in autism? What chemicals are linked to autism? This seems to be a topic that people are curious about. From the National Institute of Health, metal profiles in autism spectrum disorders. According to a Metallomics investigation, 8.5% of ASD children aged 0 to 15 exhibited elevated cadmium loads in hair samples. Again from the NIH, this study demonstrates a significant positive association between the severity of autism and the relative body burden of toxic metals. From ScienceDirect.com, association of autism with toxic metals. The current evidence from our study supports an association between higher toxic metal burden with autism. From Medical News Today, exposure to heavy metals may increase risk of autism. A recent study explores a new factor that may contribute to the risk of developing ASD, the concentration of heavy metals in a child's body. From the Wiley Online Library, the increased number of autism cases in recent years has been strongly associated with increased exposure to heavy metals. From New Food magazine, research has claimed that exposure to these toxic metals can lead to autism spectrum disorder and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. From JD Supra, can heavy metals found in baby food cause autism? While these two internet searches and this information are readily accessible to anyone with a computer, they depict an ongoing problem that many people are unaware of. Now back to Lindsey Duncan to take a deeper dive into all of this.
So the industrial age in America, also called the American Industrial Revolution, began in the late 18th century, and it continued into the 19th century. Now, while the global industrial revolution started in Britain around 1760, it spread to the United States after 1790. The establishment of textile mills in New England, such as Samuel Slater's mill in Rhode Island in 1790, basically marked the beginning of large-scale industrialization in America. The movement gained significant momentum after the Civil War, particularly with the advancements in steel production, railroads, manufacturing technologies, and so much more. Now, this new era had a significant impact on society and on the environment. The rapid industrialization brought about significant economic growth and technological progress. However, it also led to the release of numerous, if not thousands, of chemicals, toxins, and pollutants into the environment. That's what I want to talk about today. This affected both the ecosystem, like our air and our water and our food, but it also affected our human health. And some of the key pollutants released during the Industrial Revolution would be the obvious coal smoke and soot. So the sources of this would be widespread use of coal as a primary energy source for factories, trains, and for heating. The effects of this would be air pollution leading to respiratory problems, smog, and soot that covered the cities. But this soot, when it goes into the lungs, would get into the human bloodstream, therein would cause the problem. Another example would be heavy metals like lead and mercury. Now, the sources would be industrial processes like mining and the production of goods like paint and plumbing materials. The effects, we all know what the effects are. They've been widespread neurological damage, cognitive impairments, and various organ dysfunctions. So another example would be arsenic and cadmium. The sources are byproducts of smelting and chemical manufacturing. The effects, well, skin lesions, cancers, kidney damage, lymphatic conditions, blood conditions, the list goes on and on and on. Another example would be chemical dyes and textiles. Textile mills using synthetic dyes and chemicals for processing fabrics. The effects would be pollution of the water. They'd be polluting the water and harming the aquatic life, contaminating the drinking water sources. Another example would be this runoff, this industrial wastewater. The sources would be factories discharging untreated waste into rivers and streams. The effects are water contamination, loss of biodiversity, and waterborne diseases. Another example in the air would be the PM, the particulate matter and gases. For example, sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxides. These are horribly toxic. This is coming from burning of fossil fuels. The effects, acid rain, respiratory issues, environmental degradation. And my last example is going to be a massive, what I call massive wrecking ball. It's just a general bucket of chemical byproducts. Now, examples would be benzene, other volatile organic compounds, basically called VOCs, like forever chemicals, your plastics. The main sources would be chemical manufacturing, petroleum refining. The effects would be cancer risk, respiratory problems, smog formation, blood conditions, lymphatic conditions, all types of diseases. The human health impacts would be on the respiratory diseases, increased cases of asthma, bronchitis, other lung conditions due to the poor air quality. Also, there's other hazards, occupational hazards, where factory workers faced exposure to toxic substances without adequate protection, leading to illnesses and reduced life expectancy. Also, waterborne diseases. Contaminated water supplies contributed to outbreaks of diseases like cholera, typhoid fever, so they would treat the water with chlorine and fluoride, and then those chemicals over time would build up in our body, destroy the digestive system and the gut microbiome. Anyway, I could go on and on and on. This massive industrial era created environmental impacts such as deforestation, which includes clearing land for factories and resource extraction, disrupting the ecosystems. Also, soil degradation. Pollution and overuse of land led to reduced agricultural productivity, biodiversity loss, habitats were destroyed, and species were threatened by pollution and human activities. Now, I've conducted quite a bit of research, probably hundreds, if not thousands of hours of investigation into quantifying the massive discharge of the pollution on our air, our water, our food, and our soil. Now, I don't have exact figures because the exact figures on the total amount of chemicals and toxins released during the Industrial Revolution are difficult to ascertain due to limited record keeping and environmental monitoring at that time. Environmental regulations were virtually non-existent, and industries were not required to report emissions or waste disposal practices. However, it's very clear that the scale of pollution was significant and that it had a profound long-term effect on both the environment and human health. So here's what happened. In the late 19th and early 20th century, a growing awareness of these environmental damages and pollutants came about, and health issues started coming around. People started experiencing massive health issues, which led to the beginning of regulatory measures. So, establishment of specific agencies like the U.S. Public Health Service in 1912, and then later the Environmental Protection Agency, I think around 1970, were created to address all of these concerns. Next came laws such as the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act were enacted to control pollution and protect public health. Now, the American Industrial Revolution was a period of great advancement, but also brought about significant environmental and human health challenges. Why? Due to the release of these thousands upon thousands of pollutants. You know, there are more than 160 million chemicals known to humans, of which 40 to 60,000 of these chemicals can be found in commerce, in business today. 6,000 of these dangerous chemicals account for 99% of the total volume of chemicals in commerce globally. 99%. A recent survey of the chemical inventories of 19 countries and regions revealed that about 350,000 chemical substances have been registered for production and large-scale use over the past 40 years. Every single year, every 12 months, the U.S. alone sprays an estimated 1 billion pounds of pesticides on our crops to combat weeds, insects, and other pests. What effects on our health and the health of young bodies and minds and nervous systems do you think that this has had and is continuing to have on a daily, hourly, and moment-to-moment basis? You know, we boast about all the benefits of the Industrial Revolution and all the advancements, but it's a sad fact today that we've come out of this Industrial Revolution and we've been rapidly moving into the technological revolution, but we're operating on industrialized and chemicalized and profitized foundations and systems that are deeply embedded in our society. So from our food chain, which is basically Frankenfood, I mean, some of this stuff lasts 10 years and it looks the same. You know, they say a Twinkie can last on a store shelf for 100 years. I mean, this is just crazy. So basically from our Frankenfood, which is highly preserved and chemicalized, to our water systems, to our building systems, you know, the toxic building syndrome, to our schooling systems, to our advertising systems, the sugar and cereal commercials in the morning that is just pounded into our children's head, to our farming systems with the 1 billion pounds of chemicals dumped on our food and the condition of our soils, to our medical systems and our healthcare systems. And unfortunately, the list goes on and on and on. Over the past 4 decades of working in the natural health and wellness, I've accumulated some pretty frightening statistics, and a couple of them have really kind of stayed with me. They stuck with me. One is a study that was done in 2005. It revealed that at least 287 hazardous industrial chemicals passed through the placenta to the fetus. Another statistic states that the synthetic chemicals are so prevalent in a woman's breast milk today that if bottled for sale, most breast milk would not pass FDA regulations. This is pretty scary stuff. And this is what we're talking about if we're going to go to the core of autism and neurodiverse conditions. We can't pass this up for the symptoms. We've got to stay focused on the core, the cause. You know, it's another sad fact to learn that there's really only 7 or 8 key nutrients or elements that the human body needs to sustain life. These are elements such as the obvious: vitamins. Without vitamins, we don't live. Minerals, amino acids, EFAs, essential fatty acids for the brain and nerves, trace minerals, enzymes, fiber, and of course, beneficial bacteria and microorganisms. One only needs to look at the statistics and the evidence to find out that we are simply not getting enough of these critical and essential nutrients to build or to rebuild our bodies, and to especially rebuild our children's bodies with ASD and neurodiverse conditions. I would now like to read something to you from the United States Senate document number 264. Now, this was printed in the United States Congress in Washington, D.C. in 1936. So I'm going to say that again. It was printed in Congress in 1936. Its title is Modern Miracle Men, and it was presented by Rex Beach on June of 1936. It states, I'm not going to read the whole thing to you because it's quite long, but I'm going to read a couple of key points to you. It says, Anemic Earth was written, that's what it was called for originally. Anemic Earth was written in 1936 and submitted as a part of congressional investigation into U.S. farming practices. The leading authorities of the day, had been sounding the alarm that depleted soils were causing a significant decline in the nation's health, evidenced by a steady increase in degenerative diseases. But when Congress saw the price tag on repairing the nation's farm and range soils, they swept their own investigation under the carpet. Do you know, and I'm reading exactly word for word, do you know most of us today are suffering from certain dangerous diet deficiencies which cannot be remedied until the depleted soils from which our foods come are brought into proper mineral balance? The alarming fact is that foods, fruits, and vegetables and grains now being raised on millions of acres of land that no longer contain enough of the certain needed minerals are starving us no matter how much of them we eat. You would think, wouldn't you, that a carrot is a carrot, that one is about as good as another as far as nourishment is concerned. But it isn't. One carrot may look and taste like another and yet be lacking in the particular mineral element which our system requires and which carrots are supposed to contain. Laboratory tests prove that the fruits, the vegetables, the grains, the eggs, and even the milk and the meats of today are not what they were a few generations ago. No man of today can eat enough fruits and vegetables to supply his system with the minerals he requires for perfect health because his stomach isn't big enough to hold them. And we are running to big stomachs. Last part that I'll read. It's bad news to learn from our leading authorities that 99% of the American people are deficient in these minerals, and that a marked deficiency in any one or more of these important minerals actually results in disease. Any upset of the balance, any considerable lack of one or another element, however microscopic the body requirement may be, and we sick and suffer, and it shortens our lives. We've got to go to the core of these conditions, and regardless of whether we're talking about autism or ASD or neurodiverse or any of the conditions that have been on the rise throughout all of society, we are talking about toxicity, gut microbiome, horrible, poor, broken down digestive and intestinal systems, nutrient deficiencies, and the body's ability to get what it needs, to hold on to what it needs, and to rebuild what it needs to rebuild. The key is that we're holding on to the toxins. We're not getting enough nutrients. And the quickest way to break our body down, especially with these children, is to chemicalize and toxify their body and then not have the nutrients and the power and the strength and the life force to push and to throw those toxins out of the body. How are we supposed to eliminate toxins from the body? Please, please, please remember this. There are 7 channels of elimination. It's really 4, but there are 7 true channels of elimination. The human body releases toxins and poisons and heavy metals and chemicals through 7 channels. I'm going to list them out for you, and they must be opened up and they must be flowing in order for the toxins to release from our bodies. The skin is the largest eliminative organ. It releases toxins through sweating. The bowels is the second largest eliminative organ. It releases toxins through defecation, through elimination. The kidneys is our third most important and effective channel of elimination, and it releases the chemicals and the toxins through the kidneys and through the urinary tract through urination. And the fourth critical one are the lungs. And the lungs are supposed to release toxins through exhalation, which is one of the reasons why we exercise. Matter of fact, when we exercise, we're activating really 2 of these channels of elimination through sweating, right? And then also through exhalation. So those are the 4 exits to this airplane. Those are the 4 ways that the chemicals, the poisons, and the toxins can get out of our body. But what most people don't realize is there's 3 more critical channels that help process these toxins: the liver, the lymphatic system, and the bloodstream. I'm going to say it again. The liver has to process every single chemical that enters the human body, period. The lymphatic system stores the toxins and the chemicals through all the lymphatic nodes and all the lymphatic fluids. And last but not least is the delivery system, the human bloodstream. It is the ultimate delivery system. And that bloodstream can either be delivering life, nutrients, good bacteria, good microorganisms, enzymes, amino acids, proteins, essential fatty acids to the brain, all of the good things that we need to build our bodies strong. Or it's delivering chemicals, toxins, formaldehydes, glues, EMFs, poisons, toxins, paints, all of the bacteria, mold, yeast, fungus, all the stuff that our bodies are supposed to throw off, eliminate, detoxify, and fight. What we build these children's bodies with today will determine how they weather the storms of tomorrow.
Hey everyone, my name is Weston Horn. I'm a natural health practitioner, clinical nutritional herbalist, and also a master formulator. Now, it's clear the things that Lindsey just talked about have taken a huge toll on human health. Of course, everyone here knows that we've seen a huge uptick in the rate of things like autism, but we've also seen a massive increase in all diseases. In the 1960s, 4% of the United States population had a chronic health disease. Now today, we have over 46% of just the childhood population with a chronic health disease. So 4% of our total population to almost half of our children now are dealing with chronic diseases. What's causing all of it? And what's causing autism, for that fact? When we look to science, we don't have a definitive answer. This is largely because science looks at most things in isolation. Yes, we have studies showing thimerosal increasing the rate of autism, but then we also have studies showing the opposite. Yes, we see that heavy metals are higher in the hair and in the blood and the urine samples taken from children on the spectrum, but is that because of exposure, or is that because of the body's ability to remove heavy metals has been impaired? Or is it both? Emerging research suggests that exposure to air pollution and pesticides will increase the risk of autism and other neurological disorders by interfering with brain development. So it becomes imperative that reducing these environmental pollutants is crucial to protect neurological health and promote healthy development. See, the problem we've run into is our fixation on looking at this as just simply cause and effect, is that we don't look at the whole picture. We are looking for one pill to treat or the one cause to point blame to, and the reality is that we have many causes, which also means that we have many solutions. I would implore people to think about this. Science has a hard time proving one item as the cause of it all because it's all of it. It's the air pollution, it's the pesticides, it's the gut disruption and destruction that we do with our diets, our lifestyles, our massive over antibiotic usage, and it's the over-treating of the medical world, giving more and more drugs, shots, pills, and interventions. It's medical, it's environmental, it's toxicity, and it's all burdening of the body in a world where everyone's health is taking a massive decline. But some are going to be admittedly more susceptible. Now, as a natural practitioner, I can definitively say that there is hope. We see studies where children received an antibiotic and their symptoms improve greatly. Of course, this effect wears off once the effects of the antibiotic are gone. We also have many in the community who've reported that they believe the onset of symptoms occurred right after a round of antibiotics. So the medical world might have the argument, do we or do we not use antibiotics? My argument would be that the gut microbiome is at the root cause of both of those things, and it's the thing that's needing help and needing support. Research indicates that individuals with autism spectrum disorder have higher rates of gastrointestinal issues, including increased intestinal permeability. Many of you have often referred to this and heard of it as leaky gut, microbial imbalances, and other gut-related problems. A study published in Nutrients in 2010 found that 36.7% of children with ASD showed abnormal intestinal permeability, compared to only 4.8% of neurotypical controls. This suggested a significant link between leaky gut and autism. Additionally, if you look at studies in Cell in 2013, it demonstrated that mice exhibiting autistic-like behaviors had altered gut microbiota. When these mice were treated with a beneficial bacterium, both their gastrointestinal symptoms and their behavioral symptoms improved. Another review in Autism Research, published in 2013, discussed how dysbiosis, or microbial imbalance, in the gut microbiota is more prevalent among individuals with ASD, potentially influencing the severity of autism symptoms. These studies collectively suggest that the gut health plays a crucial role in ASD and that addressing gastrointestinal issues may have a therapeutic potential. Now, it's important to note for everything that I just talked about, there are already answers in the natural world. This is also what I find so promising, but we need dedicated practitioners, parents, caregivers, and more to broaden their perspective, to look at these natural answers that can support while doing no harm. In reference to some of these, we'll take leaky gut, for example. We know that L-glutamine, zinc, resistant starch, and other healthy prebiotic fibers can halt the leaking of the gut and start to support healthy functioning again. What about when we read science like this? A study published in PLOS ONE in 2011 investigated the intestinal issues of children with ASD who also had gastrointestinal disturbances. The researchers found significant decreases in the activity of enzymes that break down complex carbohydrates into simple sugars for absorption. Specifically, these enzyme deficiencies can result in undigested carbohydrates reaching the colon. When this happens, it causes symptoms like bloating, gas, diarrhea, and more. Also, if these undigested carbohydrates get down, they can alter gut microbiomes by promoting growth of certain bacteria, contributing back to this dysbiosis and imbalance that we talked about earlier. This is commonly observed with individuals with autism time and time again. Now, this carbohydrate problem from the study starts with a lack of enzymes. You can give digestive enzymes like amylase and glucoamylase and others to help break down carbohydrates at meals, and also afterwards to help scavenge the undigested carbohydrates out of the colon, helping the body and the gut get back to better balance. There are 0 side effects ever reported for someone taking digestive enzymes. Are we using and employing all of these natural strategies? What's the worst that we could do? Make someone a little healthier? I'll leave you with this, the study that probably woke me up to how much clinical data we have versus what we actually use. Clinical research from Johns Hopkins University revealed significant benefits on sulforaphane, a natural compound found in broccoli, but also particularly most in the broccoli sprouts, in treating symptoms of autism spectrum disorder. In a rigorous, double-blind, placebo-controlled study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences in 2014, males aged 13 to 27 with moderate to severe ASD were administered sulforaphane over 18 weeks. The results were nothing short of remarkable. Participants receiving sulforaphane showed substantial improvements in social interaction, verbal communication, and a reduction in repetitive abnormal behaviors compared to the baseline placebo group. Despite these compelling findings, this therapy remains largely untapped in mainstream clinical practice. This study also underscores sulforaphane's potential to modulate a lot of these underlying biological pathways that we see associated with ASD. It is imperative that we leverage this clinical data to its fullest potential, integrating sulforaphane and all these other natural treatment protocols to enhance the quality of life for those who are impacted by autism and other neurological conditions. I want to hand it back now to Lindsey to dive deeper into some of these relationships of the body and give you further explanation.
So I'd like to read from a clinical document to everyone. It's called Frontiers in Cellular and Infection Microbiology. The name of the clinical document is Role of Gut Microbiome in Autism Spectrum Disorder and its Therapeutic Regulation. I'm going to skip past the 20 or so pages, and I'm going to go straight to the conclusion, and I'm going to read what it says, just a few sentences. Recapitulating all mounting evidence elucidates the association between the gut-brain axis and ASD. Several factors leading to ASD were identified, mainly early colonization on infant health development and the effect of early microbiota dysbiosis, which is just an unhealthy balance of the good bacteria in our GI tract. In the gestation period, mode of delivery, uncontrolled usage of antibiotics, and stress. These factors eventually led to gut microbiome dysbiosis and colonization of pathogenic microbes, which impact the CNS, central nervous system, function by the production of neurotoxins. The presence of these pathogenic bacteria, such as Clostridium found in the colon of children, shows the possibility of developing ASD, period. So now I'd like to read something from Frontiers in Psychiatry. It's called, the name of the article is from 2023. It's called Effect of Fecal Microbiota Transplantation in Children with Autism Spectrum Disorder, a Systemic Review. Going to jump past the 20 or so pages to just before the conclusion. Going to be at the discussion, and it's going to just say, now, FMT, fecal matter transplant, it's basically when they take fecal matter, because it has good bacteria and good microbiome that's living in it, and they process it and purify it, but keep it alive, and then transplant that into people usually that have depression or psychiatric type issues, and its effect from the intestinal tract on the brain is phenomenal. So now they're starting to do this with ASD with very, very good results. So just take a listen to this discussion. The microbiota gut-brain axis plays an important role in ASD. Many children with ASD experience significant GI symptoms such as constipation, diarrhea, and altering constipation diarrhea, which correlate with ASD severity. Such GI symptoms appear to be due in part to dysbiotic gut microbiota and perhaps their missing roles in the modulation of metabolites that affect GI function and neurobiological conditions such as ASD and anxiety. There are significant differences in the intestinal microbiota profiles of children with ASD and neurotypical children. In children with ASD, a small open-label study found that 8 weeks of treatment with oral vancomycin, an antibiotic, a non-absorbable antibiotic which acts only in the gut, led to major improvements in both GI symptoms and ASD symptoms, although the benefits were lost within a few weeks after treatment was stopped. Now, what does that tell you? It tells you that they're trying to target the bad bacteria, the negative bacteria that's in the gut, that's living in the gut from various conditions or various sources, whether it's not breastfeeding and getting that colostrum and that first immunity imprint, or whether it's from antibiotics, or whether it's from drinking chlorinated water. If you drink water with chlorine in it, chlorine strips all of the good bacteria in the piping all the way from the processing plant, all the way underground, all the way through the cities, all the way into our homes, all the way through the piping in our homes, and it kills everything. Now, the chlorine doesn't have the ability to differentiate between good bacteria and bad bacteria. It just kills. It's a killing machine. It does the same thing in our human body. And when you strip the good bacteria, guess what takes over? Not the good bacteria, the bad bacteria, especially if the diet is high in sugar and high in processed foods. Then the bad bacteria and the bad microbes really, really take over. Did you know that the average human adult has between 4 and 6 pounds or 40 trillion good bacteria cells in their digestive system? 4 to 6 pounds and 40 trillion bacteria cells in the digestive tract. You take antibiotics, you're just obliterating it. Then you have to start from zero. You have to start from scratch to try to rebuild it. You drink chlorinated water, boom, you're stripping it. You got to go back to zero basis and start from there all over again. What's interesting about these kind of studies is they're trying to use an antibiotic that only acts in the digestive system to actually help ASD. They are, but they're only treating the symptom. They're not going to the core. You don't go in with a chemical and kill the bad bacteria. You go in with good bacteria. You go in with good microbiome, with good organisms, diverse organisms, and you let those organisms do the job for you naturally, not unnaturally. We keep tinkering and we keep playing with all of these unnatural things. We're forcing it, and it never, ever, ever works. It always ends up causing some kind of damage and some kind of destruction. So what I'm saying is let nature do her job. You put the good bacteria, the good microorganisms, the diverse microorganisms in your GI tract. They will take care of the bad bacteria. They will take care of the negative microorganisms. You don't pick some specific non-absorbable antibiotic which acts only in the gut. That's more of the same insanity. Makes no sense whatsoever. Let our body do their job. Give them what they need naturally, and our body will do the job that it's supposed to do, which is heal. It's a little bit smarter than we are, and it's a little bit smarter than our labs, and it's a little bit smarter than our science. and it's a little bit smarter than all the stuff we're trying to figure out. Give it what it needs, step back, let it do its job. I'm going to continue to read from this clinical because it's pretty educational. And this is not a clinical. This is a meta-analysis. This is an analysis of many different clinicals. So this is a gathering of PubMed and all types of clinical trials on this specific topic, which is FMT, fecal matter transplant. Again, they're chasing their tails with this. FMT, also known as fecal microbiota transfer therapy, refers to the transfer of intestinal flora from healthy donors, usually in Africa, who have high fiber diets, into the intestines of patients by gastroenteroscopy, capsules, enema, etc., different delivery methods into our digestive tract, to reconstruct the intestinal homeostasis of patients to achieve the purpose of the treatment. We reviewed the existing literature and conducted a meta-analysis, that's what I was talking about, to investigate the potential effects of FMT for treating the core and associated symptoms of children with ASD. We researched the Embase, PubMed, Web of Science, and Cochrane Library and reviewed the studies published previously to assess the effect of FMT in improving autistic symptoms in children with ASD. No severe adverse effects were reported in the studies. We showed that FMT may improve the core symptoms of ASD, and then it says FMT significantly improved GI symptoms in children with ASD and relieved constipation in children with ASD without worsening stool morphology in non-constipated children with ASD. Now I'll read you one more sentence from the conclusion. Conclusion says, in conclusion, the review showed that in the observational and case studies, the FMT showed its potential in reducing the CARS, ABC, and SRS scores and improving ASD symptoms among children with ASD. FMT may be a potential therapy for alleviating symptoms of ASD in children with ASD. Now, what is that clinical basically saying to us? They've identified that the bad, unhealthy bacteria and microbes in our gut are the problem, part of the problem. They found that antibiotic that can kill it, but it only works for a week after they stop taking it because it stopped killing the bad bacteria, and the bad bacteria just keeps growing over and over and over again. So now they're going to Africa, getting people who are eating close to the land and who are healthy and who are getting 60 to 90 grams of fiber a day and who have very healthy gut microbiome. They're taking their fecal matter and they're purifying it here in the U.S., and then they're implanting it through various methods into children with ASD and having really, really good results, especially with constipation or irritation in the gut or any GI problem. And a lot of the ASD symptoms are coming down. Why does everybody keep chasing their tail here? Why are we chasing it with antibiotics, chasing it with FMT, fecal matter transplant? Why can't we just go to a healthy diet, go to healthy digestive enzymes, go to healthy probiotics and prebiotics and postbiotics, and naturally rebuild our gut microbiome so that our gut microbiome flourishes, all 6 pounds of it flourishes in a very healthy way, and we take all of the things out of our diet that strip, hurt, damage, and destroy the diversity of the human healthy gut microbiome. Why not go to nature? Why not let nature do her job? Why do we have to keep tinkering and trying to address and focus on the symptoms and dance around the issues? Our body, if you give it what it needs, it can rebuild its gut microbiome. When that happens, it will improve the gut and the brain axis. When that happens, it affects the mind, it affects the mood, it affects the memory, it affects the central nervous system, and it affects how we communicate and how our brain functions. I don't know what else to say. Okay, here's another clinical that I'd like to read. Just a few excerpts from. This is from the ncbi.nlm.nih.gov, and it's called Fecal Microbiota Transplantation in Autism Spectrum Disorder. Going to go straight to the ending, conclusion, so I don't put you to sleep with a lot of technical information. It's pretty interesting, though, especially if you're affected by ASD. Your family is. Conclusion. The microbiota gut-brain axis plays an important role in the gastrointestinal symptoms and neurodevelopmental dysfunctions in ASD patients. FMT, fecal matter transplant, can alter the gut microbiota and improve the gastrointestinal as well as neurobehavioral symptoms in ASD patients, which is a promising treatment strategy. However, not only well-designed human studies are needed to confirm the effect, but also elucidated research to explore the mechanism. Specific microbiota interventions need to be identified to further optimize treatment options. Once again, what they're doing is they're taking good bacteria from healthy individuals, implanting it into individuals that have conditions, health conditions, and they're getting good results when I'm saying that there's a better way to do it. Supply the body with what the body needs to rebuild the good gut microbiome itself. That is the way to go. So I believe that there are three key critical factors that if we follow these and we do these on a consistent basis and we do them on a very deep level, our bodies will heal themselves. And this is when it comes to ASD, when it comes to neurodiverse and neurodivergent issues. And number one is to clean and detoxify the body. And that means the intestinal tract, yes, but it also means the brain and the nervous system. So when our bodies become toxic, we're very much like a river. And if the river is flowing and everything is moving through it and everything is purifying itself, then the body will be healthy. But when the river becomes stagnant, any of these 7 channels of elimination become stagnant and they stop flowing and they stop moving the material and the toxins and the byproducts of what we put in our body. If they stop moving that out of the body, then the body becomes stagnant. And just like a river, a stagnant river is filled with disease. A flowing river is fresh and is clean. Same thing in the human body. So how do you do that? You get the body detoxifying through the 7 channels of elimination. Remember, the 7 channels of elimination are the skin, the bowels, the kidneys, the lungs, and then also the liver, the blood, and the lymphatic system. If we can learn to move the bowels, we know that the ASD children almost always have intestinal and digestive issues. We do not want these bodies to get constipated and to get backed up. Same thing with the skin, same thing with the kidneys, same thing with the lungs, same thing with the lymphatic system, bloodstream, liver. It all needs to be flushing and purifying and cleansing on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis. So step number 2 is to repopulate and rebuild the gut microbiome. This is critical. We can cleanse all day long, but if we're not replenishing, if we're not putting that good bacteria, those good microorganisms, the good bacteria that actually makes up 4 to 6 pounds of live organisms in our digestive tract, if we're not putting that back in from what's been stripped of antibiotics and stripped with medication and stripped with chlorinated water and stripped with dyes, red dye, yellow dyes, and all the chemicals and all the preservatives and all the processing and all the dead foods and all the junk foods and all the devitalized foods, if we're not putting that good fermented probiotic, prebiotic, postbiotic, and all of the good bacteria, the fiber and the fermented foods and all of those nutrients and those microorganisms back into our 29 feet that makes up from our mouth to our rectum, that tube, that dark 98.6 degree tube, if we can't repopulate that, then it's going to be almost impossible to gain maximum healing. So that's step number 2. And then step number 3 is get these heavy metals out of the body and use minerals and building nutrients to chelate these heavy metals. Get these nutrients out of the body, these chemicals out of the body by using nutrients, pull them down, and get them out through the kidneys. Sometimes they come through the bowels and through the skin if we sweat, but most of them come through the kidneys. And you want those flushing out of the body. You want those heavy metals out. And when you get them out, then all of a sudden, the central nervous system, the brain, the nerve endings, the synapse, they all start to function and fire better. Remember, we're an electrical body. We're an electrical being. And what does electricity need? It needs conductivity. And what produces conductivity? Minerals. And what kind of minerals? Trace minerals, micro minerals, and big minerals, macro minerals. But we must have our minerals, and that's what's been depleted from our soil, and that's what's been stripped from our food chain. So these 3 steps are the core. They are going to the core of these issues. Yeah, there are other things that are beneficial. There's no question about it. But I'm talking about the core. Get the bowels moving, get the tube moving, get the digestion moving, get the bacteria replenishing, get the nutrients coming in the body, and start to build and strengthen the body and chelate those heavy metals and get them out through the kidneys.
To wrap things up, we'd like to share what we refer to as a formula for some of the key elements of ASD and neurodiversity. While this is not an exhaustive list, it highlights significant contributions from our society's history that have shaped where we are today. Depleted soils, heavy metal toxicity, mineral deficiencies, nutrient deficiencies, congested, inefficient 7 channels of elimination, constipation and intestinal toxicity, unhealthy gut microbiome, impaired gut-brain access, poor digestion and inability to break down foods, chemical exposure, mold, fungus, and yeast overgrowth in the gut and gastrointestinal issues, gut inflammation, parasitic infections, overconsumption of sugar and carbohydrates, overuse of antibiotics and unnecessary medication consumption, stripping and destructive chemicals such as chlorine and fluoride, and much more.
So in closing, I'd like to say that I hope that you all have learned something and that you're taking something away from this hour that we've spent together. Knowledge that will benefit you or your family or anyone who's important to you. I also want to thank the World Autism Summit. I want to thank Karen Simmons and the Autism Today organization. And I also want to thank all of the other presenters and speakers. And I have great respect for all of the work that they're doing to try to make a positive and impactful difference. I run 2 companies in the wellness industry. One of them is called All In Nutritionals, and the other is called Neuronutritionals, and the websites should be down below typed in. We formulate, we source, we produce, we manufacture over 100 unique, clean, and life-changing and life-enhancing products. From hydrogen generators for water to nutritional supplements for the neurodiverse to shower heads that even remove chlorine and chemicals from our water. We also do remote consultations to help people who are not able to find help in their local areas. Our approach is basically rooted in scientific research and a deep, heartfelt commitment to enhancing the quality of life for those who need it most. You see, together, we strive to make a meaningful impact by spreading awareness and contributing to a brighter and more inclusive future for individuals on the spectrum and for their families who also need support. Thank you all for spending this time with me, and be well.